Number 10. Justice. Also known as Vance Astrovic, he has latent mutant telekinesis powers that were activated when he encountered his future self, Major Victory of the Guardians of the Galaxy. The Major also traveled back in time and across realities to prevent himself from ever acquiring powers, but instead just activated them early and created an alternate timeline. Man, talk about being your own worst enemy. He accidentally killed his father and went to prison, and during this time learned to respect the law, even helping the guards during an uprising. When he was released, he had a new outlook on life and named himself Justice, becoming a hero. He has been a member of the New Warriors and later the Avengers, discovering a new way to defeat Ultron and helping them defeat him. His main power is his telekinesis, although he was once a fighter in the UCWF, Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation, where he was known as Manglin' John Mahoney. Hey guys, if you like these videos and you want to see more, be sure to take a second and hit that like button. Number 9. Black Knight. Dane Whitman is actually the third character to bear the Black Knight name, and he first appeared in the Avengers number 47 in 1967. Nephew to the original Black Knight, he inherited a mystical sword that carried a curse and fought to restore honor to the Black Knight name. He uses a winged horse named Aragorn as his mount, and as an Avenger, helped the team take on Kang the Conqueror. An excellent swordsman with magic senses, he has been a member of many other teams, including the Heroes for Hire and the Ultra Force. He had a 4-issue miniseries in 1990 and was the main character of his own series that was cancelled after a short time. If Black Knight is an Avenger that you have heard of, then good news for you, he'll be appearing in the upcoming Marvel film Eternals in 2021, played by Kit Harington. If you've seen Game of Thrones, then I'm sure you'll agree he's a great choice. Can't wait to see Jon Snow in the MCU. Number 8. Two Gun Kid. In 1948, Marvel released their first ever Western comic book, Two Gun Kid. An expert gunslinger wrongly accused of murder, he spends his life on the run, but does good everywhere he goes. Just him, his 2 6 guns, and his trusty guitar. Marvel had great success with this and went on to create a whole slew of Western themed comics, but I'll bet the kid never thought he would one day be riding alongside men in tights as a member of the Avengers. The kid met the Avengers when they went up against the time-traveling villain Kang in 1870 and got along really well with Hawkeye, so he just joins up and helps them take on Kang. Afterwards, he returns to the 20th century with the Avengers. In the modern era, he works alongside She-Hulk, hoping to become her colleague since she works at a law firm, but quickly realizes he'll never be able to catch up on all the new laws and instead becomes a bounty hunter. He rides around in an awesome jet cycle named Lightning, which he uses to fly around the city. Number 7. HELLCAT. Real name Patricia Walker. You might recognize her from Marvel's Netflix shows where she's guest starred, but did you know she was also once an Avenger? HELLCAT joined up with the Avengers in 1976, but actually had her own teen romantic comedy series before this called Miss America Magazine in 1944. Similar to Two Gun Kid, this is a popular character that sort of slowly evolved into a superhero. She appears again in 1977 in The Defenders, where she meets the son of Satan, and the two later become married, a husband and wife occult investigation team. She is a well-trained martial artist and gymnast, with wrist-mounted claws and grappling hooks. Surprisingly, she has appeared in 5 different Marvel video games, including LEGO Avengers. Number 6. Moondragon. Heather Douglas was a young girl driving through the desert with her parents when Thanos' spaceship landed on Earth. Not wanting witnesses, he blew up their car, but Heather was thrown from the vehicle and survived. Her father's corpse is later reanimated to create Drax the Destroyer. Thanos' father, Mentor, found her and took her to his homeworld Titan, where she studied the Titan's ways and unlocked her latent psychic potential. However, she becomes influenced by the Dragon of the Moon, and believing she has successfully resisted its influence, takes on the name Moondragon. She was present when the Avengers confronted Korvac, using her powers to see into his mind while they fought. She later joins the Defenders alongside Valkyrie, and discovers she's still being influenced by the Dragon of the Moon. She manages to resist it for real this time, but as they are separated, she begins to die from mutated spores, and the dragon appears again, offering to save her life if she agrees to be its host. She does agree, and then, as an evil dragon, fights against the Defenders until the 4 of them sacrifice themselves to kill both her and the dragon. Number 5. TIGRA. Greer Nelson was a costumed vigilante named Cat, who who was enhanced by a doctor who gave her cat-like powers tied to her costume. She is later mutated into TIGRA, a human tiger hybrid created through a mystical ritual. Her feline physiology grants her a number of superhuman capabilities. In addition to the usual super strength and stuff, she has superhuman senses and a regenerative healing factor. Her teeth and claws are razor sharp and capable of cutting through bone, stone, and even some metals. She wears a cat's head amulet as a talisman for her so she can change back and forth between her feline form. She became a part of the Avengers in issue number 211 and proved herself in battle against the Molecule Man. She eventually moves to San Francisco and becomes friends with Spider-Woman. She also helped out at Avengers Academy after the fall of Norman Osborn. Number 4. Falcon. Also known as Samuel Wilson, Falcon grew up in a tough Harlem neighborhood and his father was killed trying to stop a fight. His mother later died protecting her children from a mugging, and Sam eventually gets involved with the mob at one point, seeming like he would never become a hero. Red Skull uses the Cosmic Cube to give Sam the ability to telepathically speak with birds, especially a falcon that Wilson names Redwing. He is sent to take on Captain America, but Cap frees Wilson from Red Skull's control, and as Falcon, he becomes Cap's partner, and the two work together for a long time. Black Panther also helps out Falcon by helping to create his harness that allows him to fly. He joins the Avengers between issue 184 and 194, but finds out that he's just been drafted to fill a quota, and resentful of being a token, he quits as soon as he can. Number 3. Firebird. First appearing in Incredible Hulk number 265 in 1981, Bonita Juarez was walking across the desert of New Mexico when a huge ball of fire crashed down into the sand just 10 feet from where she stood. Bathed in extraterrestrial radiation, she later discovers she received fire-based superpowers. She believed the fireball was a manifestation of the American Indian legend of the Firebird, and so makes herself a costume and decides to become a hero with the name Firebird. She helped out the West Coast Avengers in a battle against Master Pandemonium, and later was recruited onto the Avengers during a spiritual journey during which she was going by the name La Espirita. She discovers that her powers were actually from an alien child's failed experiment and not an act of God, and after a brief crisis of faith, returns to the name Firebird. Her and the Rangers worked alongside Kane in Scarlet Spider Volume 2, helping him to battle against a monster made of pure energy. Number 2. Stingray. Walter Newell was an oceanographer and engineer supervising the construction of an underwater city. He designed a unique suit for deep sea exploration, basing the design on manta rays and taking up the name Stingray. He was ordered to investigate Namor, but believed him to be innocent and later allows him to escape. In Avengers Volume 3, he was one of the many heroes who responded to the rallying call, but chose not to remain an Avenger full-time. He later becomes a fully active member of the Avengers when Kang the Conqueror begins to strike all around the Earth. He helped to enlist the help of the Atlanteans in the fight on the waterfront, and was a great asset thanks to his nautical experience. He ultimately leaves the Avengers, but remains a reserve member and still responds to emergency calls. Number 1. Demolition Man. Similar to Justice, D-Man was also once a wrestler in the Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation. Born Dennis Dunphy, he was raised in Detroit and idolized superheroes as a boy. A college football player, hoping to one day be drafted, he accepts an offer from the power broker, hoping he'll get the power he needs to become a professional football player. Unfortunately, he winds up too powerful to safely compete with normal athletes, so the power broker sets him up as a wrestler. After Captain America takes an interest in the power broker, Dennis allies with him. Later, he joins the Avengers informally. He designed and built his own costume, based on Wolverine and Daredevil suits, and he nearly dies in a plane crash, joins the US Army, and at one point joins Wonder Man's Revengers, dedicated to dismantling the Avengers. He even becomes bonded with a symbiote at one point, and is later turned into a vampire to save his life after he becomes mortally wounded.
Number 10. Silverclaw. Maria Santiago, aka Silverclaw, was born near the village of Kamakiri in South America, and this village was filled with simple folk whose ancestors worshipped the ancient gods until the arrival of the Spaniards. Her father was a native of the village who was constantly ridiculed for his beliefs, and his daughter was no different as she was ridiculed for, well, different reasons. You've heard of werewolves, right? Well, Maria had the interesting ability to transform into a variety of were forms, including jaguar, anaconda, cockatoo, monkey, sloth, and cheetah. And they were unfortunately uncontrollable for a while, which was not too great to say the least because it scared a lot of people. Now fast forward a bit and we see Silverclaw join the Avengers during the Civil War arc. And in this arc she fought Captain Marvel, who was attempting to get her to sign the Superhuman Registration Act. Silverclaw was pretty against the SHRA as it was not the law in her country and she was not a US citizen. Now as a result, a pitched battle between the two occurred with Silverclaw able to just so close evade arrest. After Captain America's assassination, she did voluntarily surrender and was registered as a US citizen. Now why is she so useless? Well, because she's not only just a bit lame of a character, but she didn't really do anything of worth that landed her a permanent position on the Avengers team. Now I do like her power though, I can't lie.
Number 9, Swordsman. Okay, so I'll give you that Swordsman was at least talented in his art form, but at the end of the day, he's just a guy with good sword skills. You might be thinking, who are you going to rag on next, Amanda? Clint Barton? You also might be thinking, Amanda, wow, did you just use the term rag? Are you from like the 1930s? I'm not, though I should be maybe. And no, I'm not going to insult Hawkeye by putting him on this list. While there are many other Avengers who are just humans with superpower-like skill sets, Clint at least is also a super interesting character. Swordsman, however, remains quite dated, relegated to being a hero of the past. He might have been good with the sword, but that also wasn't enough to have him save himself and also save his true love Mantis at the same time. Tisk tisk. And sure, Swordsman may have returned as a cooler Katati version of himself, but let's not forget that this is technically a different character. As while his Katati version has all of Swordsman Jacques Duquesne's memories, he is still an entity separate from Swordsman, and made more interesting by the fact that he is part of the alien Katati race, let's be honest.
Number 8, StarFox. Now originally named Eron and rechristened Eros at the age of 5, StarFox is the son of two Eternals who has a pretty interesting power to say the least. Now what's that power, you ask? Well, he has the ability to manipulate the pleasure centers of the brain of any people within 25 feet of himself. This power emanates from him at all times and causes people to feel, well, good. And by concentrating just a little bit more, he can provoke extremely pleasurable sensations and make a person highly aroused, euphoric, or totally sedated depending on what the situation calls for. Eros has spent most of his life fighting his power-hungry brother Thanos, and that's right, that Thanos. And honestly, you'd think that being related to one of the biggest and strongest bad guys in all of Marvel history would make you a pretty useful ally, but sadly you'd be wrong. The Avengers admitted him to their training program and gave him the name StarFox since they felt Eros was a little inappropriate for a code name. And he served the Avengers faithfully for several months, helping them vanquish enemies like the Wizard, Terminus, and Maelstrom. That being said though, when he first joined the Avengers, he intentionally failed to mention his ability. Needless to say, when they found out, he didn't last.
Number 7, Two Gun Kid. Another human, Two Gun Kid is a Western style hero. Sure, Westerns are cool, but Two Gun Kid is basically just a cowboy. Take away his guns and his horse lightning and there ain't much there to work with. We aren't talking about the original Two Gun Kid either. The original Two Gun Kid was Clay Harder, who first appeared in 1948 in Two Gun Kid issue number 1. This version of Two Gun Kid, Matt Hawk, would not appear until 1962 in issue 60 of the series. He doesn't have superpowers and he's literally from the 1870s, so he wouldn't be a very knowledgeable hero in the modern day. In fact, when he came to the modern day, he had Hawkeye show him around, became an honorary member of the Avengers, but then decided he missed his own time period, so returned home. Peace.
Number 6, Demolition Man. Born and raised in Detroit, Dennis Dunphy idolized superheroes ever since a young age. After not getting drafted onto any professional football teams, which was kind of his dream as an adult, he was approached by an agent of the Power Broker and offered the chance to undergo a process to increase his physical strength to superhuman levels, hoping that this would increase his chances of becoming a professional football player. Obviously he agreed and had his strength boosted, but with his newfound power, he actually couldn't safely compete against any other regular athletes. Not too long after, Captain America took an interest in Power Broker Inc. because of one of its clients, the Super Patriot, and then soon after, Dunphy allied himself with Rogers, created a costume based on Daredevil and Wolverines, and captured Carl Malice, the head scientist. This unfortunately resulted in Dunphy's own capture though, and he was subjected to more tests, which resulted in a bit of a heart attack. Captain America thankfully saved him and nursed him back to health, and for a time, Dunphy acted as Steve's telephone hotline operator. When Cap reformed the Avengers, he gave D-Man a call, though one can't shake the feeling it was mostly out of sympathy. D-Man was quickly forgotten and lived a sad life as a homeless person before resorting to villainy. Dennis is a very nice guy and hopefully he gets help, but he's really just not Avengers material. Should've stuck to being Steve's secretary, man.
Number 5, DOOMBOT. This is what happens when you let Hank Pym run the Avengers. In the series Avengers AI, Hank leads his own Avengers team. Who does he decide to put on it? Let's see. DOOMBOT. Let's also acknowledge that this only happened because after one of the many battles against and defeats of Ultron, Hank decided keeping artificial intelligence as prisoners was bad, but he had no qualms with reprogramming them, which also seems morally ambiguous in my opinion. He also had no problem with putting tiny black holes inside them, which also seems very irresponsible. True facts. Hank reprogrammed the DOOMBOT to be loyal to him and made him a member of his artificially intelligent Avengers team, whose roster also included Victor Mancha and Protector. Yeah. Pym probably just shouldn't get to lead Avengers teams in my opinion. Certainly not AI ones either. He also created Ultron, so. DOOMBOT wasn't completely useless as he was still a DOOMBOT, but wasn't useful enough to be remembered. Sad face. After the AI Avengers disbanded, the rest of the Avengers lost track of him, or didn't care to keep up, and we didn't really see him again until he reappeared to help his teammate Victor Mancha find a new body in the 2017 Runaway series. Also, you should read that because it's really good.
Number 4. Triathlon. Delroy Garrett Jr. is a pretty exceptional human, I won't lie. I mean, he wound up making it into the Olympic Games and won a total of 3 gold medals, so obviously he's got some talent, right? Well, I hate to break it to you, but not really, as he tested positive for steroids and was basically banned from sports for life after that. Turning to religion, Garrett ended up joining a cult that bestowed him with the powers of 3D Man, which basically meant that he gained various superhuman physical attributes that are approximately 3 times greater than that of even the finest human athlete. Pretty much he gained the powers he got from steroids without the steroids. Captain America eventually recruited Triathlon for the Secret Avengers, a team that worked against the Superhuman Registration Act, but Triathlon kept pushing for the main Avengers to be just a little bit more diverse, and that landed him on a spot on the main team for a while. Now in all honesty, that's all he did for the Avengers, make them just that tiny bit more diverse, so kudos to him for that, but maybe try being a better hero next time.
Number 3. JOCASTA. JOCASTA could have been super cool, but she was kind of relegated to just being Ultron's tattletale and almost loyal mate. She was built by Ultron to be his mate and bride in a sense, sort of like the story of Frankenstein's bride. At first he had tried to transfer the mind of Janet Van Dyne into JOCASTA. This actually succeeded, but just made Janet in JOCASTA's robotic body seek to tell the Avengers what was going on, and they put a stop to Ultron's madness, reversing the procedure. JOCASTA would return a few more times in the comics, but never made much of an impression. She actually could have been a really cool character, but it always feels like she's never really given much of a chance to shine. Still often being resorted to plots where Ultron wants to merge her with Janet, even in the modern day. She was granted Avengers status when she decided to sacrifice herself in order to destroy the Evolutionaries' base before she died in the process. And Avengers Annual Issue 17 out of 1988.
Number 2. Stingray. Dr. Walter Newell was a brilliant oceanographer and engineer who supervised the construction of a domed undersea city with plans to grow food for mankind. The city was attacked by the Plunderer, but he was stopped by the Atlanteans Namor, the Submariner, and Lady Dorma, but unfortunately the city was destroyed. Now in response to this, he designed a suit specifically for the deep sea exploration that he named Stingray, as much of the design was based on manta rays. The suit can safely operate in depths of up to 1,200 feet, has a unique oxygen diffusion system based on fish gills, grants Newell superhuman strength and durability to handle underwater conditions, and is able to swim at high speeds underwater. Now Newell can also glide when not in the water, which is a pretty sweet add-on if I do say so myself. Also should probably mention that the main weapon of the suit is a potent electrical blast, so the name Stingray is definitely fitting. In all honesty, the only reason Stingray was ever an Avenger was because the team needed to use his Hydro base as a launch site when the US government placed airspace restrictions preventing the Avengers from launching Quinjets to downtown Manhattan. Other than that, he really didn't offer much else for the team. Sorry, man.
Number 1. Dr. Druid. Dr. Druid was Anthony Ludgate, originally a student of psychology and psychiatry who was very much interested in the ancient powers of druids and those of the occult. He wasn't such a bad hero to begin with, but quickly became overshadowed by greater mystic heroes such as Doctor Strange. He also studied under the Ancient One, and after some successful heroic pursuits was made an Avenger. However, he became bewitched by Ravonna Renslayer and did some pretty awful things, like manipulating the Avengers into making him chairman, usurping Captain Marvel aka Monica Rambeau, who held the title previously. Following this, he got lost in the time stream, and when he returned, used his hypnotism to swindle someone out of their property so he could rent it out to make money and spend his days drinking. Since then, he has died, returned, and become more of a villainous character in the comics, with his Avengers membership being revoked. Which makes sense.
And at number 10, the Founders. The West Coast Avengers debuted in their own self-titled comic, but the initiative to create a team located on the other side of the country was spearheaded in the Avengers, from a member of the team who wasn't even a part of the initial lineup, Vision. The android came up with the idea after the Avengers found themselves preoccupied and overwhelmed by the events of Secret Wars, with most of their heavy hitters tied up in other matters. Now, Vision stayed with the Avengers on the East Coast, and Hawkeye was named the chair of the WCA, and became a founding member, which led the team in over 102 issues. Up next, number 9, past members. So aside from Hawkeye, who else has been on the team? The founding members were Hawkeye, Mockingbird, War Machine, who everyone initially thought was Iron Man, funny enough, Wonder Man, and TIGRA. Now from there, Hawkeye recruited many other additional characters over the years, including Scarlet Witch, Iron Man, the real one this time, The Thing, Hank Pym, specifically as a scientific consultant, Moon Knight, Firebird, the Wasp, and of course, Vision, with that group of heroes popping up in the second volume of the series at varying points in time. Human Torch, Quicksilver, Machine Man, Living Lightning, Spider-Woman, and Darkhawk would all have stints with the team too, primarily after 1989. A whole other team of WCA members would pop up during the Fresh Start initiative at Marvel, but we'll get to them a bit later on. And at number 8, the name change. The West Coast Avengers haven't always been referred to as such. Now back in 1984, when the team was introduced, there was a bit of a backlash amongst fans concerning a second Avengers team. It seemed kinda gimmicky. Oh, if those fans could see contemporary comics now. Now after several years leading into the 1990s, the WCA weren't the only Avengers team kicking around. So to ensure that fans and readers would not get confused, Marvel decided that the best thing to do was to change all of their Avengers titles, so that they could be found alphabetically next to each other at comic book stores. In other words, the team names were altered so that the word Avengers was the first word in their title. Now the West Coast Avengers were changed to the Avengers West Coast, a title which was eventually cancelled in 1994. And at number 7, the suicide attempt. The West Coast Avengers history is filled with a whole lot of interpersonal drama, just like the Avengers is. Perhaps one of the most intense story arcs though to have appeared in the West Coast Avengers is when Hank Pym joined the team as a scientific consultant after his mental health took a turn for the worse when he was a part of the Avengers. Now between issues 17 and 24 of the West Coast Avengers Volume 1, Hank is suicidal, and actually writes suicide letters, including ones to Tony and Tigra. Meanwhile, while Hank is having a personal crisis, the WCA are off fighting desert-inspired supervillains that are wacky as hell. Overall, that story arc just had a lot of strange things going on. Not that suicide is strange, but everything else surrounding the West Coast Avengers at the time was pretty whack. Hank, back at the base, talks to his ex-wife Janet, aka the Wasp, who had divorced him after the infamous wife-beating incident, and essentially says goodbye to her, giving her some really bad vibes about what's going on with him. Then Hank gets a gun, puts it to his head, but before he can shoot, he's interrupted by Firebird, who talks to him into appreciating his God-given gifts. He then gets a little manic, and goes through a strange confidence boost, calling himself Dr. Pym as his superhero alias, and then freaks out momentarily when he thinks Firebird is a nun. She reassures him that she isn't, and then they make out. Overall, not the best way to approach mental health issues, as we're very much aware. He challenges Moon Knight to a fight, then chickens out, and then goes off to help save the WCA, who are trapped in the past. It's a whole roller coaster of emotion for Hank. And at number 6, Ultimate Marvel. Of course the West Coast Avengers have an alternate version of themselves. This specific alternate can be found in the Ultimates Marvel universe. They are a secret team created by S.H.I.E.L.D. called the West Coast Ultimates that consisted of Vision, Quake, Wonder Man, Black Knight, and Tigra. And they've been through some pretty wild stuff. For starters, they were sent out to find Osama bin Laden, but failed when Wonder Man hulked out, and then the team had to fight him to settle him down. Now seeing this, Nick Fury decided that it would be best to put them all in stasis tubes, holding them until they were needed. Flash forward to the United We Stand storyline, in which the Children of Tomorrow, aka Reed Richards' fanatical cult, kills the US president and both houses of Congress, igniting a civil war. The state of California wanted to break apart and become its own country, but Steve Rogers, who had been elected president, denied them of it. So the state's governor decided to take the group out of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s custody and unleash them against the Ultimates, Earth 1610's version of the Avengers. Moving on to number 5, A Fresh Start. In 2018, Marvel relaunched their comics with an event called Fresh Start. Now Fresh Start saw the return of fan favorite characters like Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Thor Odinson, Bruce Banner, and Logan aka Wolverine. Many of these characters post-Civil War II had either died or moved on to something else, with legacy heroes taking their place and picking up their respective mantles. This relaunch also introduced a new incarnation of the West Coast Avengers. While Hawkeye still remained their leader, the second Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, was also on the team, along with Gwenpool, America Chavez, Quentin Quire, and Kate's boyfriend Johnny Watts aka Fuse. Johnny's sister Ramona Watts would also join up with the team during the series' run, and Kate's ex-boyfriend, Novar popped up as well. And of course, Gwenpool would bring Jeff the baby landshark into the team in issue 8 after he first appeared in issue 7. And oh my god, Jeff the landshark is like one of the greatest things ever. Another really neat aspect about the comic is that its narrative is broken up by reality television style interviews, in which we see the characters divulge to a crew various thoughts, feelings, etc. concerning the missions they go on and their interactions with other team members. It's kind of a neat twist. Moving on to number 4, representation. The Fresh Start iteration of the West Coast Avengers are a very diverse cast, to say the least. But not just when it comes to the color of their skin. Multiple members identify as part of the queer spectrum, making it one of the biggest LGBTQ titles in Marvel's recent history. Ramon Watts, aka Alloy, is dating America Chavez. And now it seems that they aren't the token queer characters in the series because Ramon's brother, Johnny, who has been dating Kate Bishop, has declared his attraction to Novar, Kate's ex, who also declared a mutual attraction. The final issue of the series contained a few panels of the television crew interviewing Kate Bishop, Novar, and Fuse, in which both Marvel Boy and Johnny reveal that they find the other one hot. Johnny says separately in his interview about Novar, he's pretty hot though, and Novar in his says, well, she's with Johnny and I have to respect that. And I can see what she sees in him. He's hot. And then we get a panel in which Kate is being interviewed right after the crew inform her of what the two of her love interests have said, to which she responds, wait, have I ever even dated anyone straight? To which the crew responds with, nope. Moving on to number 3, US Agent. While the Avengers generally refused to tango with the government, the West Coast Avengers were always open to the outside influence. As time went on, the US government became more involved in the team, to the extent that Hawkeye was actually briefly replaced as their leader by a Steve Rogers carbon copy, US Agent. Several members of the team quit because of this, and the West Coast Avengers actually gained more enemies due to his involvement. Eventually he was booted out, thankfully, but it did cause quite the stir up for the team at the time. Moving on to number 2, ForceWorks. Remember how we mentioned that Avengers West Coast was cancelled in 1994? Well, this is what was created to replace it. ForceWorks, a ridiculously 90s series that took the remains of the West Coast Avengers team, but was led by Iron Man, who wanted to establish a team that wouldn't only fight crime, but would also prevent disasters from occurring. Tell that to his Civil War self. Scarlet Witch was the leader of the team, which consisted of War Machine, Spider-Woman, Cybermancer, US Agent, Moonraker, and Wonder Man, who was later replaced by Sentry. This team's story arcs would eventually lead into one of the worst Avengers storylines of all time, Avengers: The Crossing, in which it was revealed that Tony Stark was actually under the influence of Kang the Conqueror, but then it was revealed to actually be his future self, Immortus, in disguise. And then he was killed off altogether and replaced by a younger version of himself from an alternate reality. This then bled into Heroes Reborn, which was yet another highly disliked story arc. And finally, in at number 1, cancelled again. Clearly, cancellation is nothing new to the West Coast Avengers. The latest iteration of the West Coast Avengers, the Fresh Start Gang, were cancelled after 10 issues, ending with West Coast Avengers issue 10, much to many fans' dismay. But while the series is coming to an end, it seems as if the team will live on, guest starring in another Marvel series, Superior Spider-Man.